Hi, everybody. Today is Thursday, May 14th. It is our fourth lesson of week 7. So today we are going to go over our what, why, and how. You all have your very last no red ink assignment. And then we're going to talk about YA literature. Next. So what are we doing, right? Why are we doing that thing, and how are you going to know that you're on track? What are we doing? We're talking about YA literature, right? So young adult literature. And why is because we're going to wrap up the year actually by exploring YA literature, talking about what's out there, and continuing to talk about this idea of your values and how they change depending on, how old you are, your life situations, your experiences, all that kind of stuff. So how you're going to know you're getting it is that you're going to be engaging in this higher level thinking about young adult literature, and you're going to answer some questions based on some readings and some discussion that we're going to have. So we're going to start with your very last no red ink assignment of the year. So good luck with that. Then, young adult literature. Here's the thing I want you to think about. Young adult literature. Okay. We've talked about approaching adulthood, right? When you're in this space where you're not yet an adult. There's also this space too of being a young adult, right? Being someone who's about to be an adult, but not quite there, but you're not really a kid anymore, right? And I want you to kind of think about what's the purpose of young adult literature, right? What are some characteristics? Where did young adult literature even come from? And I can tell you right now that young adult literature is actually a newer thing in comparison to writing from the rest of, the time frame of, since writing has been around. If this is how long writing's been around, YA literature is that much, okay? And so here's what happens. When we talk about, kids versus adults, right? We have literature for adults. I can think right now off the top of my head, right? I would consider Gregory Maguire, who wrote Wicked, or Stephen King, or John Grisham, right? I would consider Danielle Steele, maybe. Those are people who are adult authors. They write books for adults. The person who wrote Pillars of the Earth, right? I would probably consider that a more adult book. So we've got adult literature, and then we have children's literature, right? So I'm thinking, the stuff that's pretty old, right? Dr. Seuss. Little kids are reading Elephant and Piggy, right? I love Elephant and Piggy. But that's not really adult literature. Thinking of, ABC books and 1, 2, 3 books, all that kind of stuff, right? Our Tree Named Steve. I love and adore that book, but it is a children's book, right? So we have children's books, we have adult literature, and then it wasn't really until people realized that there was nothing for young adults that this YA literature came about, right? So there was really immature reading and really mature reading, and something sort of needed to change, right? And so young adult literature, the purpose of it, right, is to sort of fill that gap between children's and adults literature. Cool, we got that. We kind of got the purpose. And so what happens is when you look back on literature, right, if you're looking at it like you're a historian, you're thinking a historian, what happened is kids started going to school, right? You guys are probably going to start learning about that in social studies if you haven't already. I know you guys talked a little bit about children before schools when you talked about factory workers last year in your quest groups for 7th grade, right? Kids working in factories and really unsafe conditions. When kids were pulled out of factories and they were put in schools, right? There was children's literature, there was stuff for little kids, there was nursery rhymes and all that kind of stuff, but there was nothing for this emerging young adult group, right? Which is where I would consider you guys to be, right? This middle school level. There was nothing written for young adults about young adult issues. They either read about really immature, childish issues or like adult issues. And so basically what happens in young adult literature is you're seeing for the first time that there's a more complicated plot, right? So if we think about, let's say Dr. Seuss, The Cat in the Hat, the very main character is the Cat in the Hat. The conflict is that he wants to play and the two kids are like, we can't be playing today, dude. We're going to get in trouble, right? And that's like a really easy to understand conflict. Some of the stories we've read, just to even talk about conflict and plot, have been really easy conflicts, right? Like Elephant and Piggy. Waiting is not easy. We read that book together. It was so easy to understand. There wasn't a lot of complicated plot twists. There wasn't lots of complicated internal thought. And most importantly, there weren't a lot of characters. So what we start to see when we look at the characteristics of young adult literature is we have more characters. We have more emotion, right? We have more complicated things that people are working through. Oftentimes, one of the other characteristics that you see with young adult literature is like you guys, for example, are middle school aged. You will read literature about individuals in high school, right? You're reading about experiences before they happen to you, and you're gaining all of this different knowledge and understanding of different people's experiences that are maybe not similar to yours, but are from the same age group. So for example, when I was in, I think it was when I was in middle school, it might've been when I was in high school, right? Mean Girls came out. Everybody was watching Mean Girls. It was a young adult book that had been turned into a young adult film. And it was about all of these really wild things. It was about, teen relationships and problems that teens are having, like drinking and drugs and sex and sports and school and, crazy friendships and bullies and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's really what we're talking about when we're thinking about young adult literature specifically, is it's really only for this short period of time, right? Middle school-ish age and high school-ish age, that not only is that being read, but also that's, something you can identify with. So, a lot of you guys read Harry Potter when you were a little bit younger. If you go back and you reread, right, a lot of the issues that Harry Potter starts to deal with, even though they're in like a fantastical setting, right, a fantasy world, they're young adult issues. They're issues that young adults have to deal with. So I'm just thinking, for example, right, when Hermione has her little time turning thing because she wants to be able to take X number of classes and she can't because she doesn't have enough time, right? That's a real life issue. She's trying to balance in her life, her schoolwork and taking classes. And that's, a magical solution that she finds. All that kind of stuff, right? We have Harry, who's an orphan, and he's sort of navigating this I don't have a family, I don't know my family struggle that a lot of young adults have to navigate. So thinking about young adult young adult literature, okay? What you all are going to do today is you have a reading to do, not that. You have a reading to do. It's this, YA novels. And it's called Millennials Are Still Reading YA Books, right? Millennials, that would be me, right? I'm a millennial. I'm born in the 1990s. And it talks about, what is YA? It sort of gives us a little bit about what is YA. And then, why am I all the way up here? It talks, you hear from some different authors, such as you hear from, let me see, who do you hear from? I don't know. Anyways, you hear from some different authors. You hear from some different millennials. They talk about the hate you give in this article, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to read this article today, and then you are going to respond to the questions that are in Reading Young Adult Books. Okay? So that is your task that you will submit at the end of class today. Have fun.